to just go through how exactly I do my trading activity when I run it in class. So this works really well. It allows me to talk about a few aspects of trade. First is which there are gains from trade and exchange. That is, buyer and seller both gain when they engage in a trade and exchange, right? Second thing is it allows the students to see really easily how resources can kind of move around through an economy. Okay. Third, it allows you to then, once the activity is done, it allows you to talk about tariffs and the impact of tariff and taxes on trade and exchange, what that does to the gains from trade and exchange and so forth. So I use this spreadsheet, and then I take my class and I divide them up into 4 countries. You don't have to make the students move. Generally, you can just kind of look and say, all right, you 6 here, you're in this country. You 5 over here, you're in this country, and so forth. So you can name your countries whatever you want. I just put the country names up here. I use what I call defunct countries, so countries that don't exist anymore and are called something else. So I use Rhodesia, Czechoslovakia, Burma, and Yugoslavia. So those are my 4 countries. So I basically say, okay, I figure out which students in each country. Then what I do, I have some formulas in here. I have a spreadsheet that I also have up that just has their names with a number next to it. It just makes it easier for me to type in all the students' names for the teams, right? So in going along here, I would say, okay, this is 3, and it's Gavin, and notice it automatically changes, right? So if I were to go 5, this would change from Connor to Zach, and then go back to, I think, 18. So it's just a quicker way to just assign all the students, put their names there so they know which country they're a part of, and so forth. So I go down and I do that for all the teams. I basically, all the countries. I basically put the students in each one. So then we're ready for round 1. So what I do is I have kind of little bags of stuff. So usually I use mostly some candy, usually cheap Halloween candy. Usually I give students about 4 pieces each of candy. It can be assortment. A lot of times I try to hand it out so that certain types of candy are in one area, just like the actual economy, where you're going to have orange juice in Florida and beef in Texas and maybe oil and timber up in Canada, right? And these things will move around. I try to do that. It's not perfect, but I kind of do that. Usually also have some gag gifts, loofahs, bubbles, beef jerky. I used to use like a People magazine or Us Weekly, a gossip one, and give it to someone who I can tell does not like that at all. And then watch them as they trade with other people and so forth. So, okay. So I hand out, each student gets a little bag or assortment of things. And then the first round, what I do is I go through for each student as part of each country. I say, okay, just take a look at what you've been given and look around the room to see what everyone else has been given. And I want you to just evaluate on a scale of 0 to 10 your satisfaction level with what you have, right? And I also stress in this game that you can't like pull snacks or granola bars or protein bars out of your backpack. We're just using what I've given you in this activity, right? So no outside stuff, right? We're just looking at what an economy would be like, even if there's no production, right? Because most students would think, well, nothing's being produced. Like, how can there be gains from trade and exchange? Well, there can. Just because we value different things, the more people we can trade with, you'll be able to see that value. Okay. So I go through round 1. I basically say, look at what you have and tell me how it makes you feel, scale of 0 to 10. So suppose Gavin's going to say a 4. Most students give you some initial rating somewhere in the middle, 4, 5, 6, or 7, right? Connor, maybe he got the can of bubbles and maybe he doesn't like them, so we'll give him a 1. Mateo, happy-ish, gets a 7. Demi's real excited, maybe an 8. Go down here, Czechoslovakia, Bella, maybe she's a little bummed, a 2. Jace gets a 6. Reese starts out at 5. Charlie starts out at a 4, and Caleb is at a 7, let's say. Jack, suppose he starts out, again, he's real happy. Let's say he starts out at an 8. Mateo starts out at a 1 because he ended up with the beef jerky, something like that. JD starts out at a 3. Mike is at a 6. And Peyton's at a 5, let's say. Sheree starts out at, let's say, a 6. And Evan's a 4. And Zach's a 7. Fisher's a 3. And Jaden is a, 5. Right. All right. So I've done the first round. I've put everyone's kind of initial valuation of what they received. All right. So now what I do is I move on to round 2. And I say, okay, look, you can trade what you've been given to other students, but you can only trade inside your own country, right? So I restrict it so there's no international trade. Now, when they trade, they don't have to trade kind of bag for bag, right? They can trade, if someone really likes Snickers and they're willing to give out 2 or 3 pieces of candy to get a Snickers, that is totally fine, right? So you let them figure out the terms of trade. They don't have to just take one bag and exchange it for another, right? They can exchange whatever pieces they want, right? So, but it has to be only within their country. I also emphasize that these are voluntary exchanges, no coercion, no theft, right? This is a orderly, good economy. So, all right, so that's round 2. So then I let them trade within their own countries only, no international trade. And then when they're done, when the kind of noise starts to die down and they're switching from trading to talking to each other, then I basically say, okay, let's get your evaluation. So suppose Gavin made a trade and he's a little happier. Connor is still stuck with whatever thing he didn't like. He's at a 1. Mateo's still at a 7. And Demi, maybe real excited, went up to a 9. Bella, she made a trade. She's up to 5. Jace is still at 6. Reese maybe goes up to 7. And Charlie stays at 4, and Caleb. Now, occasionally I have a student that just wants to be a party pooper and will basically make a trade, and they're like, no, this stinks, right? They'll be like, I'm a 4. That's fine. Just put it down there. There's enough students where it's not going to affect the result. So maybe Jack stays at an 8. Mateo finally got rid of his bubbles. Maybe he goes up to a 7. JD goes up to a 5. Mike goes up to a 7. Peyton goes up to a 7. And then Jure goes up to a 7, let's say. And Evan goes up to 6. Zach goes all the way up to 9. Fisher goes from a 3 to a 5. And Jaden stays at a 5. Okay. All right. So now we go to round 3. So round 3, what I do is I say, all right, fine, we're going to allow some international trade. But it's going to be restricted still. So people in Rhodesia, the first country, can trade and exchange with people in Czechoslovakia. I'm breaking that border wall down. But they can't trade with anyone in Burma or Yugoslavia, right? So that is, everybody in Rhodesia here can trade with people in Czechoslovakia. But these people, Rhodesia and Czechoslovakia, cannot trade with Burma or Yugoslavia, right? Burma and Yugoslavia can only trade amongst themselves, right? So I'm maintaining this border so that Burma and Yugoslavia don't interact with Rhodesia and Czechoslovakia, and vice versa. Okay. So then, at this point, round 3, I encourage them to kind of get up and walk around, because at this point, there's some students who are a little further away. So I let them trade and hawk their wares and whatever. And the end of round 3, as it starts to die down, same thing. I basically say, okay, tell me, look at what you've got. How does that make you feel, right? So suppose Gavin stays at a 6, but Connor finally got rid of whatever it was that he couldn't stand. He jumps up to a 7. Mateo, still party pooper, stays at a 7. Demi is just real excited. She's at a 10 now. Bella, it goes up to a 6. Jace finally got some trades he could believe in. Reese stays at a 7, let's say. Charlie goes up to a 6. And Caleb finally starts to go back up and says a 5, right? Jack goes up to a 9. Mateo stays at 7. JD, suppose he goes up to 7 as well. Mike is up to 8. Peyton is up to 8, right? And then Jure stays at 7, let's say. And Evan goes up to 7. Zach stays at a 9. Fisher, suppose he stays at a 5. And Jaden finally goes up to a 7. Okay. All right. So then round 4 is the last round, and I do what you probably already think I'm going to do. I basically say, okay, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, right? I'm going to allow everybody to trade with everybody in the room, right? We just have one big free trading classroom, right? So everybody on one side of the room can trade with people on the other side of the room. I encourage them to get up, walk around, try to sell whatever they've got, and see how it goes, right? And then that's the last round, and then we record everything, right? So suppose Gavin goes up to 7, suppose Connor stays at 7, but Mateo finally goes up to 10, Demi's already at 10, Bella, suppose she goes up to 8, and Jace now is at 9, and Reese goes up to 8, and Charlie's up at 8 as well, and Caleb wants to be a party pooper again and goes back down to 3. Jack is up at a 10. Mateo suppose he stays at a 7. JD goes up to a 9. Mike goes to a 9. Peyton goes to a 9. And Jure goes up to an 8. Suppose Evan stays at a 7. Zach stays at a 9. And Fisher goes up to, 8. And Jaden goes to 10, right? All right. So now we're finished with the rounds. And then what I do is I basically say, okay, now let's look at not only how the whole class did as a whole. So if I basically add up all the value for each round, what happened, right? Did we roughly stay the same, or did total overall classroom value increase as we were able to trade with more and more people? So in all the years I've done this, the graph always looks like this, right? So round 1, when you're just given some initial amount, you have your value. Round 2, when you're able to trade inside your country, total value goes up. You're able to trade with some people, not everybody, but some. So there are some gains from trade and exchange. Goes from 92 up to 115, right? Round 3, when you can trade with even more people, total value goes up to 136. And round 4, it's up at the highest, 156, right? So the idea is, look, when you buy and sell, and you can buy and sell with more and more people, you can find more stuff that you like. And again, the point here is that we don't even have production. We're not even talking about entrepreneurship, innovation, new technology, new things produced, nothing. Like the goods are the same that we started off with, right? The goods that we all collectively valued at a value of 92 somehow have been rearranged, and we now all value them at 156, right? It's because we all have different preferences and different values, right? And so through trade and exchange, we can become more satisfied, better off, and we both do it. It's not a win-lose, it's a win-win game. Now, so this is where some people would say, okay, yeah, fine, but some countries are better off and some countries are worse off, right? Like, China gains and we lose, right? No, that's wrong. So that's where I also have tabs that basically show the different countries. So Rhodesia, same thing. Even when I'll have countries where somebody tries to torpedo the result, right? They try to be the party pooper. Usually if you have enough students, it just washes out. So every country, even inside that country, the more people they can trade with, it goes up. So Rhodesia, Czechoslovakia, Burma, Yugoslavia, it always shows this upward trend that basically illustrates this idea that, hey, look, the more people you can trade and exchange with, the better off you're going to be, right? And of course, that second aspect is resources will flow to those who value them most, right? And so that's why I try to start off with certain candy in certain areas. And by the end of the activity, you'll see that like Baby Ruth started off on one side and ended up somewhere else, right? The beef jerky starts here and moves somewhere else. The bubbles are somewhere else, right? So, and that's exactly right? We've got plenty of orange juice in Florida, right? But it doesn't stay here. It goes all over the United States and all over the world, right? Same thing with beef in Texas, timber and oil in Canada. It moves all over the place, right? So this activity really illustrates those two ideas. The gains from trade and exchange, both buyer and seller make themselves better off. And the second aspect, which is that resources will flow to where they're most needed just through trade and exchange in a market economy. Now, this is where if you want, you can, if you have time, you can start to talk about tariffs and taxes, right? So you can say, all right, now we've just done the activity. Let's think about how tariffs and taxes would have affected these trades, right? And pretty easily students can see, oh, well, yeah, if there was a tax, right? If I made an exchange and I had to give up a piece of candy when I made the exchange, there's probably a lot of exchanges I wouldn't have made, right? And so you can see that taxes and tariffs basically reduce, I mean, tariffs are taxes, but anyway, you can see that that would reduce the gain from trade and exchange, reduce the resources that would kind of flow and so forth. So anyway, that's it. That's the activity, and it works pretty well. Students enjoy it, and it really hammers home those key ideas about trade.